For over 3,000 years, history's greatest cold case has remained unsolved. A mysterious confederation known as the Sea Peoples appeared out of nowhere, brought the dominant empires of the Bronze Age to their knees, and then they vanished. Historians have spent centuries debating who they were and where they came from. But now, thanks to a massive geoarchaeological breakthrough involving 483 forgotten settlements, the map of the ancient world is being redrawn. We haven't just found a missing piece of the puzzle, we've discovered an entire lost civilization that might finally explain the collapse of the Bronze Age. And the scale of this discovery is, quite frankly, insane. To understand the magnitude of the new findings, we have to understand what was lost. Around 1200 BCE, the world was more globalized than most people realize. Great empires were linked by trade, diplomacy, and complex supply chains. Then, in a matter of decades, it all stopped. Cities were abandoned, writing systems disappeared, and the lights went out on civilization. For a long time, the Sea Peoples were the primary suspects, a shadowy group of maritime marauders mentioned in Egyptian records. But the narrative always felt incomplete. How could a group of random pirates topple the mighty Hittite Empire? According to new research led by organizations like the Luwian Studies Foundation, the answer wasn't just pirates. It was a forgotten superpower hiding in plain sight. While we focused on the Greeks and the Hittites, a vast region in western Anatolia remained an archaeological blind spot. This area was inhabited by the Luwians. For decades, they were treated as a minor group of independent petty kingdoms. But recent systematic mapping tells a very different story. Researchers have now identified 483 major settlement sites in this region, settlements that have been largely ignored or forgotten by mainstream archaeology for nearly a century. When you plot these points on a map, a pattern emerges: a dense, wealthy, and strategically positioned network of city-states. These weren't just farmers. Reportedly, the Luwians possessed their own distinct writing system, hieroglyphic Luwian, and a massive military potential. They were the third power of the Bronze Age, positioned exactly between the Hittites and the Mycenaean Greeks. So, how does this solve the Sea People's mystery? This is where the theory gets fascinating. According to the emerging data, the Luwian kingdoms likely formed a coalition. For years, they had been squeezed between larger empires. New evidence suggests that they eventually rose up, forming a united front that swept across the Hittite heartland. But why did these 483 settlements remain hidden for so long? Imagine an area the size of Switzerland packed with Bronze Age skyscrapers, and yet we simply walked past them. The sheer density of these sites suggests that Western Anatolia was one of the most populated regions of the ancient world. The Luwians controlled the richest mineral deposits and the most vital trade routes linking Europe and Asia. When you look at the sheer number of these forgotten towns, nearly 500 of them, you realize that we weren't looking at a group of tribes, we were looking at a sleeping giant. According to publicly available information, many of these sites show signs of advanced hydraulic engineering, massive dams and irrigation systems that allowed them to survive in a changing climate. This level of organization implies a centralized military command. It explains why, when the Sea Peoples finally struck, they didn't just raid, they conquered. They had the logistics, the numbers, and the motive. The Hittite Empire, which had stood for centuries, crumbled in less than a generation because they were attacked by a neighbor they had underestimated for far too long. The mystery deepens when we look at the specific nature of these 483 settlements. They weren't built like typical Greek cities. They were fortified hubs designed to withstand long sieges and control the movement of vast armies. This wasn't a civilization focused on art and philosophy alone. It was a civilization built for total war. Researchers believe that the Luwians might have developed superior bronze casting techniques, giving their infantry an edge over the traditional chariot-heavy armies of Egypt and the Hittites. It's like discovering that a quiet neighbor has been building a high-tech arsenal in their basement for 20 years. But what happened after the, quote, uprising? This internal regional conflict created a, quote, domino effect. According to some scholars, the displaced populations in the victorious Luwian fleets, now mobile and without a central authority to return to, became the very sea peoples that the Egyptians eventually encountered. It wasn't an invasion from the outside, it was a systemic collapse triggered by a massive regional uprising that we are only now beginning to map. The victory was so destructive that it eventually consumed the victors themselves. The Luwian coalition fractured, and their people were forced onto ships, searching for new lands to call home. This explains why the Sea Peoples appear in Egyptian records as a, quote, confederation of tribes rather than a single nation. They were the remnants of a shattered world. You might wonder, how do we lose 483 settlements? The answer lies in the history of archaeology itself. In the early 1900s, funding and interest were heavily concentrated on Troy, Mycenae, and the Hittite capital of Hattusa. Western Anatolia was often dismissed as a, quote, buffer zone. Furthermore, many of these sites are, quote, tells, artificial mounds created by thousands of years of human habitation. To the untrained eye, they look like natural hills. But with modern satellite imagery and geomapping, these hills are revealing their secrets. We are seeing a level of urban density that rivals the most famous civilizations of the era. Some of these tells are over 30 meters high, containing layer upon layer of history that has never been touched by a shovel. Some researchers go as far as to call this World War Zero. It wasn't just one battle, it was a series of interconnected conflicts involving the Luwians, the Greeks, and the Hittites. This new data suggests that the Trojan War might not have been a localized myth, but a small part of this massive regional conflict. If the Luwians were indeed the catalyst, it changes everything we know about the transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. It turns the Sea Peoples from a supernatural mystery into a logical outcome of geopolitical collapse. Think about the implications. For over a century, our understanding of Western history has had a massive, gaping hole in its center. We've ignored a civilization that was arguably more powerful than the Mycenaean Greeks. This new map of 483 settlements doesn't just fill that hole, it reconstructs the entire foundation of the Bronze Age. We are now seeing reports of Luwian influences found as far away as Palestine and Italy, suggesting that when this civilization collapsed, its refugees spread their technology and culture across the entire Mediterranean basin. They didn't just disappear, they became the seeds of the Iron Age. The discovery of these 483 settlements serves as a powerful reminder. Our understanding of the past is always evolving. History isn't just what's written in the textbooks, it's what's still buried under our feet, waiting for the right technology to find it. By mapping the Luwian lands, we are finally giving a voice to a lost culture that shaped the destiny of the Mediterranean. They were the architects of the collapse, and perhaps the unintentional fathers of the world that followed. But as we peel back the layers of these forgotten mounds, a new question arises. If a civilization this massive and this advanced could be completely erased from the collective memory of humanity for 3,000 years, what else are we missing? The insane truth isn't just that we found the Sea Peoples. It's that we realized how little we actually knew about the world they destroyed. The solution to the mystery of the Sea Peoples is more than just a name or a location. It's a revelation about the fragility of greatness. It's a reminder that even the most powerful empires can become nothing more than a series of hills in a forgotten field. So, the next time you look at an ancient map, remember that the empty spaces might be the most crowded of all. The story of the Luwians and their 483 cities is proof that history is never truly settled. It's a living, breathing puzzle, and we've just found the piece that changes everything.